All right, we are back here getting ready for the NBA Finals here. Unusual matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat. Joining me today, FanSided's NBA editor Ian Levy is here. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on here. I gotta say, it's certainly been a lot of fun with the playoffs here. I just feel like we get a much more wild NBA postseason than we usually have. So, what do you thought about the postseason as a whole?
It's been great. I think there's been a nice balance of um, I don't know. We've had some surprising teams making it through. Obviously, I don't think anybody was picking Heat Nuggets at the beginning of the playoffs. But just the way that we've gotten here has been exciting. Celtics and Heat going to Game 7. I don't think anybody necessarily wanted to see LeBron's season end early, but for people who enjoy Lakers Schadenfreude, seeing them get swept by the Nuggets, sure that brought some good feelings to a lot of NBA fans. And it's just been a sequence of sort of great matchups, interesting characters set off against each other. And then the backdrop has been, as teams have gotten winnowed out, the offseason is sort of kicking up in the background, especially with so many teams firing their coaches right after. The Bucks get eliminated, go right into a new coaching search. Suns get eliminated, go right into a new coaching search. 76ers get eliminated, go right into a new coaching search. We've got the James Harden stuff. So, the ramifications of the playoffs are like unfolding in real time while the later rounds have gone on. So I think that's made it really fun too.
Yeah, let's start with the Nuggets here. They've been sitting around waiting for the finals for a little bit here because, as you mentioned, they swept the Lakers first round. They beat Minnesota in 5. They win the big series with Phoenix in 6 in the second round here. So, what's your big takeaway from what you've seen out of Denver in the playoffs? How they've gotten here?
I mean, they're healthier. The core has been in place for a little while. Obviously, they've got some new pieces who have been huge for them. Aaron Gordon, I think, is playing better in his role than he ever has. Contavious Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown, I think, particularly off the bench, has been fantastic. He's been able to, they had a great backup point guard in the past with Monte Morris, but Bruce Brown gives them a different look, and with his defensive upside, I think he's been a huge difference maker for them. And so, I think this is the team that Denver has wanted to fuel a championship run for the past year or two, and now we finally got everybody healthy at the same time, and we're sort of the right role players plugged in around them, and we're seeing what they can do.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And I have to say, I feel like as an NBA fan, I do like the throwback angle that sort of the Nuggets have, where it's just not a team that was, a bunch of superstars come to one place and team up and try and form a roster. And it's a team where they found their own star, they put pieces around him, and instead of resisting temptation to blow it up, they've been building and building and building. Now it's finally come together. Sort of like how like those '90s Bulls sort of weather adversity, learn how to win together. I do like that aspect of the Nuggets.
Yeah, and I think they took some big gambles on their team building too. The Aaron Gordon trade um, could have backfired, pretty spectacularly, and tying a lot of their future salary cap to him, could have gone horribly. The same thing with that huge Michael Porter Jr. Extension they signed him to, and if he hadn't been healthy this year, if he'd continued to have back problems, I mean that already was looked like maybe a risky deal when it was signed. Looked increasingly risky last year with his injury problems, but he's been great and he's right there. And if those two guys are helping lead the Nuggets to their first title, they're worth every penny, even if they're maybe overpaying for them or maybe regretting it when they get to the last year or two of those contracts. It's worth every penny if it gets them to a title this year.
Yeah, honestly, they're not going without Nikola Jokic, who's the two-time MVP, and obviously, I mean, he's a guy I feel like casual NBA fans know his name, but don't really see him play because the NBA doesn't put the Nuggets in a lot of marquee broadcast spots here. So, like, for the casual fan, like, how would you describe what makes Nikola Jokic so special?
I think, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, he's insanely productive, in sort of all your basic box score stats. He scores, he passes, he rebounds. I think probably NBA fans, even if they haven't watched a ton of Jokic, they're aware that he's an exceptional passer. They've seen some of his highlights on SportsCenter top 10. These insane no look passes and then his scoring efficiency too. Scores a lot, but does it with really high shooting percentages around the basket and from beyond the arc. But until you watch him for a full game, until you really sort of get 48 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever, the full Jokic experience, you miss. Just watching highlights, you miss so much of what makes him special. The way he sets up the defense, the way he really controls the flow, the vision and the anticipation. It's not just that he can sling these passes. It's not just that he can see when a guy's going to come open. He can see some of these plays, 5-6 seconds before they happen. It's like a chess grandmaster, seeing a dozen moves ahead. And it feels like that a lot watching Jokic. And you don't always get that sense of him, that full sense of the control he has over the game when you're just watching a 4-second clip of him throwing a no look pass. And so I think NBA fans, who haven't spent a lot of time watching him, they're really getting the full experience now. And it's so much richer than either the box score can capture or, a handful of highlight clips can capture.
Yeah, I also think it's fascinating with the Nuggets too. When you watch sort of them go through the playoffs, obviously everybody thought they were going to crush the Timberwolves, and they did. But I feel like once you got to Phoenix, once you got to the Lakers, everybody was saying, "Oh, Denver's going to fall apart now. They don't have the stars." Whether it's the Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker trio, whether it's LeBron and AD, everybody's expecting, "Oh, now the Nuggets are going to fade into nothing here." And they obviously took care of both those teams in the finals here. Do you feel like they have a chip on their shoulder from like the lack of respect they've been getting nationwide? I feel like they were probably the most disrespected one seed I think we've had in a couple of years in the NBA.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know the personalities on the team that well, but my sense is that they all sort of have a little bit different motivation. I think there's some guys on that team who clearly have a chip on their shoulder, and that's a big part of sort of what fuels them and makes them great. I think that's clearly part of the recipe for success for Jamal Murray. I think you could say the same for Bruce Brown. I think he's somebody who is sort of underrated through the draft process. Maybe didn't get as much credit as he should have for what he did with Brooklyn, and then probably felt a little disrespected or uncelebrated, with so much attention paid to Kyrie and Durant there in Brooklyn. And so I think for guys like that, having a chip on their shoulder, I think is a big part of it. For KCP and Aaron Gordon, I think they're guys who really relish their role. And I think especially for Aaron Gordon, finally, I keep coming back to this idea. I can't even remember how many years ago it was, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and he was in Orlando, and they were like, we want him to be a small forward and we want him to play like Paul George. And it seemed absurd at the time. It was a terrible, they got a terrible result for that out of the season. And I think it's might be just sort of liberating for him to not feel that pressure, to not feel like he has to be more than he is. And to just, focus on what he does well. And, so I think that's probably the case for him and KCP. And then for Jokic, it's hard to tell, he's so he presents so like lackadaisical. It seems like nothing flusters him. He's never stressed. The way he navigated the MVP conversation with Joel Embiid the past couple of years, both of them said they didn't really care about it, but you knew that Embiid really did care about it, and Jokic, probably didn't. And so, yeah, I don't know if chip on the shoulder, I don't know how much that fuels Jokic as much as he just seems like a guy who just loves playing basketball and doing it well. And so, it might be the success that he enjoys more than might be the winning more than, what he gets out of winning for him.
Yeah, let's go to the Heat for a second here. Obviously, we got to start with the epic Eastern Conference Finals they just played, where it looked like we were going to have both series as sweeps. About a week ago, I said, okay, we're going to just chill for a week and a half for the finals. And Boston makes this big comeback. They had the Derek White shot in Game 6 to force the Game 7. Then Miami sort of just throttled them last night here. So, what's your general thoughts on the whole Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, it was hard. It felt like shooting variance was really was really the deciding factor. And if you looked at both of those teams on paper, I would have said that the Celtics were a better and more reliable and more consistent 3-point shooting team. And they weren't in this series. The Heat made their open shots. They got they got great shooting from guys who maybe don't have the greatest track records, guys like Caleb Martin, who's, a fine 3-point shooter, but not an elite one. And he was fantastic in this series. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, who, was a lost cause with the worst contract in the NBA. And suddenly he's back in the rotation and he's drilling threes and, attacking closeouts. And, yeah, it really seemed like the Heat were playing with confidence. And when their shots weren't falling, they didn't lose their heads. They kept grinding, and the Celtics were hit by some bad shooting variants, but it seemed like it affected them much more. And with all the talent on that team, you would hope or expect that they had a couple counters or something else to go to if the jumpers aren't falling, and they didn't seem to have that in this series.
Yeah, it does feel wild though, because considering how that series ended with Boston's winning 3 games in a row. They have the buzzer beater force Game 7 because all the momentum was on Boston's side here. You a lot of credit to that Miami team for finding a way to just not only win Game 7 but dominate Game 7. It's usually like when you get the historic play like that, where it's the buzzer beater, Met fan, the Andy Chavez catch. So usually when that happens, you win. But this is a rare case where it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, it was wild. When the Celtics won Game 6, I thought they would probably win Game 7, having momentum, being at home, a chance to make history, and then probably, being the better team on paper coming into the series. I thought things were lining up for them. Thought the Heat probably had a chance. Though I did not expect, a 20-point blowout. That was sort of the least likely of all the myriad possibilities for Game 7. So, not entirely shocked that Miami won, but pretty shocked that they won by such a huge margin.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, and we can start. I also want to touch here on the path that he took here. It's an incredible thing here. This is a team about a month and a half ago gets blown out by the Hawks in the play-in tournament. Is fighting tooth and nail with the Bulls in the fourth quarter just to get in the field. Now they upset Milwaukee. They beat my team, the Knicks, in 6 games. They have this wild ride of the Celtics to get to the finals here. Has there been more unusual paths to the finals than what Miami's gone through?
I certainly can't think of one. Yeah, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I know maybe I'm wrong or maybe I misremember, but didn't the Knicks make the finals as an 8 seed during the lockout year, like Tim Duncan's rookie year?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. I think there was also a best of 5 in the first round, which also helps the Knicks in that case.
Yeah, there was a ton of wonky stuff that year because it was a 50 game season, and the Knicks were probably much better than the 8 seed. I think if I remember, they had some injury problems and stuff like that. I think that was the first year with Allen Houston and Latrell Sprewell, something like that. But it's I can't recall anything like this for the Heat. I mean, I think we've seen things like this for a single series. I don't think we've seen anything like this sort of over and over and over again. And I think each part of this has been impressive. Beating the Bucks is really impressive. Beating the Knicks is really impressive. I think winning Game 7 after giving up so much momentum to the Celtics and then going into Boston and winning Game 7, I think might be the most impressive part of this entire run.
Yeah, I think that's for sure here. And I also will point out again here, they were 3 minutes away from getting eliminated by the Bulls, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, they were right there. I mean, they did not. I didn't think they looked like a surefire playoff team for most of this season. I thought, bubble, play-in tournament team, and at best, kind of an easy out in the first round, and here they are.
Yeah, I do think it's a lot of credit to the this idea of the Heat culture here, because obviously, we sort of have throughout the season saying, "Oh, what's Miami's identity? They don't do any particular one thing well." I think we sort of learned the playoffs here, they're really like a chameleon. They sort of just like do whatever you do better. And I feel like that's sort of like the idea. You sort of break down the idea of the Heat culture that's been going like viral the last few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been incredible. And I think, Jimmy Butler is getting a ton of credit for his play, rightly. He's been phenomenal. There's been moments where he's gone quiet and sort of, let his teammates take the lead. But there's also been moments where he's been absolutely incredible. But I don't think he's getting enough credit for the way his swagger is sort of like the vessel for the entire team's confidence. It's always really hard with Butler, for me at least, to know when he's being 100% serious and when it's sort of a put on, like he presents with this incredible confidence. It's not always clear how much he actually believes and how much he's, trying to speak it into existence or, overstating it, putting on a show. But I think the fact that he has been so consistent, so consistently confident, has played with such intensity throughout this entire series, I think throughout this entire playoff run, I think it's taken so much pressure off of his teammates, and put it on himself. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. It's not the leadership and putting the pressure on yourself for the good of your team is not just about taking the big shot or making the defensive play. It's about, I think in this case, it's about how you talk about, how you talk about the team with the media, how you present yourself, how you talk about the opponent, how you, he could put himself out there and antagonized, different opponents throughout this playoff run and sort of put the ire of the opponents on him. He's taken everything on, I think, to the betterment of his teammates.
It also makes you wonder, especially the Philly fans, I must be sitting there watching this thinking, man, we had a choice between him and Tobias Harris. We picked Tobias Harris.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because there's plenty of other things that could have gone wrong. I mean, you look at him and you're like, all right, this is like a legacy defining run, but how come he's never done this before? He has played on teams with better teammates than I think he has with this Heat team, and hasn't been able to do it. And so, yeah, it's he's the Heat have caught a ton of breaks, and they are, to their credit, they are making the most of them, him included.
Yeah, one thing I'm curious going into the finals here, before we get to the keys here, is obviously Denver's sitting around for a while now because they wrapped up their series about a week ago. They've been just chilling on ice here. Like, is this something that you worry about here, a Nugget fan, that sort of like they lose momentum? It's just sitting on the side of Miami. You had to play all 7 games of that series.
I don't think so. I can imagine for some teams, like by the same token, I don't think the Heat would. I don't think Heat fans would worry about it with this team because of Jimmy Butler and because they have that intensity. And so I think like with the Nuggets, same thing. Like their players, their leaders, they don't seem like the kind of people who are going to lose focus. Jamal Murray might struggle. He might miss some shots. He's not going to lose focus or intensity no matter how long he's been sitting. I think you can say the same thing, for Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown. Those guys are going to, they're going to come 150%. And Jokic, like we were talking about before, he's so even keeled. He's so, nothing seems to ruffle his feathers. Nothing seems to bother him. And, I don't think, a week off versus, playing in a back-to-back. I don't think it's going to change his demeanor, his preparation, his readiness, his intensity, anything like that.
All right, so let's go keys to victory here. If you're the Nuggets, what are the keys to beating the Heat in the finals?
I mean, I don't know what you do to beat this Heat team other than, you hope the rest of their role players don't make shots. I think, they have a bunch of defensive options that they can throw at Jimmy Butler. I don't know how much it'll be Aaron Gordon. I don't think they want Michael Porter Jr. anywhere near him, but I think KCP and Bruce Brown can do some of that, although they're both probably at a big strength disadvantage against Butler. But I think those three guys will handle him. I think they the Nuggets have to feel good about their ability to throw multiple defenders at Butler. I think it's about defensive rotations off the ball. Everybody else making sure that they're not letting Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent and Max Struss and Duncan Robinson beat them from beyond the arc. There may be some talk about Jokic's rim protection, and if the Heat can really attack the basket, that gives them an advantage. But I think the Nuggets feel fine with their offense. I don't think they're going to sweat that at all. I think they feel like they can score on anybody. So, it's about trying to keep Butler as under control as possible, and then making sure the rest of those defensive rotations are crisp and on a string, and keeping the Heat's shooters down.
Yeah, let's go to the Heat now too. Obviously, besides the obvious of seeing if Bam Adebayo can slow down Jokic at all here, like what are their keys to victory?
Yeah, I think that the Heat obviously, I think are going to want to attack the basket. They're going to try and exploit Denver's apparent lack of rim protection. If they can get Jokic or Aaron Gordon in foul trouble, I think that really helps. Getting free throws, driving kicks. I think they're going to hope that opens up their offense. I wouldn't be surprised, just like the Lakers dabbled with some other defenders on Jokic so that they could leave Anthony Davis off the ball and let him crash down on cutters and control dribble penetration and try and sort of win the battle of the paint that way. It wouldn't surprise me if the Heat try some other players besides Bam on Nikola Jokic. I know Kevin Love has been starting, but hasn't been playing a ton of minutes. It wouldn't surprise me if he kind of starts on Jokic. Duncan Robinson, big size disadvantage, but they may give Robinson or Caleb Martin some minutes on Jokic as well. They don't quite have as much bulk as the Lakers did, but they may try some defensive wrinkles like that. But I think mostly they're going to hope that their individual defenders can hold up and can keep up with their assignments, and that their drive and kick and attacking the basket is going to get them some easy points.
All right, my last question here is obviously the series starts on Thursday in Denver here. Not a series the NBA, I'm sure would have wanted for TV rating purposes. I'm sure they much rather had Celtics Lakers than this matchup here. But if you guys make a pick right now, who would you pick to win the series?
I'd go with the Nuggets. It feels awful to pick against the Heat after they've, proved everybody wrong 3 times in a row now, but I'd go with the Nuggets. I don't know, 6 games maybe. I think they are. I think the Nuggets are probably the best team that the Heat have played so far, will have played in the postseason. And I think not just on paper, but in terms of their preparation, their momentum, the lessons that they've picked up through earlier series in the earlier rounds, I think they're sort of more prepared for Miami than any of the opponents they've played yet.
Yeah, I feel like I also put my chip on the Nuggets very early in the postseason. I put them as my pick to win it all. Like in the podcast before I said, I do have a little action on the Nuggets as well. So I'm hoping this does come true.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Ian, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, people follow on social media and keep up with the NBA coverage over at FanSided.
Keep checking out FanSided at fansided.com, and our NBA brand is the Step Back, separate social media accounts, _step_back.
All right, Ian, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.